Disclaimer, I am not a vet. Just like with anything, do your research, read up on it, and then decide what's best for you and your family. I'll put some links below to websites that have great information on raw feeding. I also encourage you to have a conversation with your vet before you change your dog's diet. Hey y'all, it's Jessica with Freedom Canine Training. In this video, I want to show you how I make fermented vegetables that I add to my dog's meals. I firmly believe that for whole health for both dogs and humans, we really need to rethink what we put into our bodies. I feed my dogs raw whole foods. I supplement their meat and organs with raw eggs, sardines, and fermented vegetables. Each vegetable provides your dog with nutrients that they need to thrive, and fermenting them creates all the great, good probiotic bacteria that helps keep their guts healthy. Anytime you can replace kibble with whole fresh foods, your dog will benefit, even if it's not the entire meal. If you decide that you want to continue to use kibble, just replacing a little bit of that kibble with fermented vegetables will really benefit your dog. Items you'll need are Himalayan sea salt. You'll need to make a saltwater brine, which I'll show you how to make in just a minute. To do that, you need clean fresh water. And by that, I mean either bottled or distilled. Tap water, whether it's city or well, may contain contaminants like fluoride or maybe too high in minerals that's going to negatively impact your ferment. A large bowl or container to mix everything in, and glass mason jars to store them while they ferment. Some additional items that are useful but are not necessary are this masher or muddler. I will put the correct name down below. I don't remember what it is. This is used to push all the vegetables down to the bottom. It helps release the juices as well as keeps everything compacted. A weight. These glass weights will keep all of the veggies underneath the brine throughout the process. A canning funnel. This is excellent for containing your mess when you're trying to get the veggies into the jar. Burping or vacuum lids. And something to mark your jar so you know when it went in, when to take it out, whatever information you want to put on the jar. I just use masking tape and a marker. My go-to veggies are the ones that you saw at the beginning of the video. And although I try to vary my veggies, sometimes it's easier for me just to grab a bag of broccoli slaw off the shelf and throw that in a jar with some brine. All right, I'm gonna reset the camera up so you can see what I'm doing over here on the counter, and we'll get started making some ferments. There's research out there that states that dogs can't digest whole vegetables, so I just shred mine like I'm making kraut. Before you shred yours, if you're not using the glass weights, you're going to take off a couple of leaves of cabbage, and that will act as a weight to keep the vegetables underneath the brine. The first thing we're going to do is add a tablespoon of salt to our vegetables and then mix them around really well. Because I have so many in here, I'm gonna use a tablespoon and a half, and then we'll see where we're at. You can do this a couple of different ways. I'm just gonna stir this up. I do recommend that you get your hands in there and kind of squish the vegetables around. That will help the salt start to penetrate and the juices start flowing. You'll know you're almost ready when you are squeezing and juice comes out. We're gonna go ahead and let this sit for another minute or so while we make our brine. The brine recipe that I've used in the past is 3 tablespoons of sea salt to 4 cups of water. I'm gonna just do 2 today. I added an extra half a tablespoon to my vegetables. And I want to see what happens when I just use 2 tablespoons. Once your brine is mixed, you're going to stir your vegetables again. You can use your hands again if you want. Now we're going to fill our jars. I want my brine to be right about shoulder height to the jar. So I'll fill the vegetables up to about 3 cups. You're going to put just a little bit in and then use your mash or muddler to push them down. Some recipes don't call for a separate brine. The reason is when the vegetables start breaking down because of the salt. That one doesn't have a good, one doesn't show you very well. When they start breaking down with the salt, they create their own juices, their own brine. And as long as the vegetables are below that, then you don't really need a whole lot of additional brine. I have a little bit of vegetables kind of sticking out in all of my jars, so I'm going to add just a little bit more of the stuff that I made. Because I know that I'm not going to need this entire 4 cup, I'm just going to put them in a jar, put the rest of this in a jar, and keep it in the refrigerator. You can see on these I stopped right about the shoulder. They might be a little over full. This one, if you have a jar that's filled halfway, as long as the veggies again are underneath the brine, then you don't have to fill that all the way up. So veggies, we filled our jar, put our brine in here. I'm going to use the weights, but this is where if you don't have the weights, you would take your lettuce leaves or cabbage leaves and stick them right in the top. I want to show you kind of what that looks like. I'm just going to break this in half. And you're going to push this down where the brine covers the leaf. And so what's going to be sticking out is the cabbage leaf. You can put 2, you can break it in half and put 2 on there just to make sure that your veggies stay underneath that brine. So hopefully I can show you, I'll show you in this one where you don't really see any veggies. I have my weights. That was a mess. If you buy the Fermented lids, or the self-burping lids is what I'm going to call them, you basically take the flat metal piece out. You're going to reuse the ring. They fit right inside, and you cap your jar. Once your tops are on, you're going to want to put these guys in a cool, dark place. I just used a shelf in my pantry. Fermenting takes roughly 4 to 8 weeks. I've always marked mine about 6 weeks and rarely have a problem. You'll know they're done when you taste it and it tastes pickly, whether you have used dill or not. They're going to kind of taste like pickles or like sauerkraut. So you saw how easy this was. You shred your cabbage, you get your saltwater brine, and you put them in a jar for 4 to 8 weeks, and there's your sauerkraut. So if you like that, then you can make your own, and that way you'll know where all your ingredients are coming from. Even though this is dog food though, I still taste it after the 6 weeks just to make sure it's not too salty. If it still tastes really salty to you, then I would put it in there for another week and then continue to do that every week until it has more of a pickly flavor versus a salty flavor. Every few days, you're going to need to do what they call burp your jars. I use these special lids that have the hole in them, and you just replace the metal part with this, and they essentially burp themselves. That way I don't have to remember to go in there every few days. If you don't, you will most likely end up with a mess. Even if you use these though, I do recommend putting something underneath your jars. I feel like these are really, like, these are filled kind of full, so I have a feeling that they're gonna be a mess. The container that I used to mix everything in, that's where I store my jars. That way, even if they do overflow, it's all contained. Once the veggies are fermented to my liking, I replace the lids with the regular metal lids that they came from and stick them in the refrigerator. And then I simply add a forkful or spoonful to each of my dog's meals. If you want to get technical about the amount of vegetables your dog should be eating a day and you're feeding raw, the guideline is for an active dog that does not need to gain or lose weight, they are fed a meal of 2.5% of their body weight per day. And then 10% of that should be vegetables. So roughly, if my math is correct, for a 70-pound dog, they will eat 2.8 ounces of vegetables per day. I hope that this has been helpful for y'all. Before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to learn more about me, check out my website, freedomcaninetraining.com. And as always, if there is anything I can help support you on, reach out, let me know, and I'll see y'all later.